Hi, Mystery Recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror action movie called Dead Snow 2. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with a flashback as a Norwegian man named Martin Heikerud remembers the horrible events of the past few days. He and some of his friends had gone for a hike in the woods where they found a casket full of World War II era gold. However, things started getting weird pretty quickly as a group of Nazi zombies furiously attacked them. Several of Martin's friends were killed while he was bitten on the arm. Scared that he would turn into a zombie himself, Martin took the drastic measure of sawing off his arm. He then left behind the casket for the Nazi zombies and ran away to save his life. In the present day, an amputated and tired Martin gets into his car. He thinks that the whole strange ordeal is now over as he has left behind all of the treasure, but he doesn't realize that a gold coin from the casket is still sitting in his pocket. Just as he is about to drive off, the coin drops to the floor. Right on cue, the leader of the Nazi zombies, Herzog, appears nearby. The cruel commander smashes the car's window and grabs Martin. A horde of undead soldiers also begins surrounding the area. Martin somehow manages to start his vehicle and steps on the accelerator. However, Herzog clings onto the window tenaciously as the car drives away. They speed on the highway in this precarious position until Martin notices a truck coming from the other side. He suddenly steers his car close enough to the massive truck, which then hits Herzog square on the face. The Nazi commander is yanked off of Martin's car, but his amputated arm falls inside. Martin then tosses the cursed gold coin on the ground and drives away. On the other hand, the trucker stops his vehicle and gets down to assess the situation. He notices the unconscious body of a man laying down nearby. The poor trucker then desperately tries to resuscitate Herzog, but this causes the Nazi commander to jolt back to life, and he stabs the trucker to death. Herzog then picks up the gold coin, which was by the roadside nearby. His treasure is now complete, but it is obvious that this was not the only thing that he was after. In the meantime, the effects of lack of sleep finally begin to catch up with Martin. He tries his best to stay awake while driving, but eventually dozes off to sleep. This causes the car to get out of control and crash into a pile of snow by the side of the road. Meanwhile, Herzog gathers his army together and gives them strict orders to head to the nearest town. After regaining consciousness, Martin finds himself in a hospital. Also present on the scene are two police officers who immediately question him. Turns out the authorities have found the mutilated corpses of his friends, including his girlfriend, in the woods. Martin is now the prime suspect in the murder of at least 7 people. However, a surgeon tells him that not everything is doomed. When Martin was brought into the hospital, he had no right arm. The cops had found an amputated arm lying in the car and mistook it to be Martin's. The surgeon was able to perform a complex operation and stitch the arm back to Martin's elbow. Unbeknownst to them, the arm belongs to the Nazi zombie commander Herzog and is filled with dark magic. A horrified Martin checks his arm, which suddenly begins to act on its own will. It snaps the handcuffs the police had put on and immediately attacks everyone in the vicinity. Martin can only watch helplessly as his right arm brutally murders the surgeon. But before he can cause further damage, the 2 police officers hold him down while a nurse injects him with a tranquilizer. Martin slowly drifts back into sleep, and he is then tied to the bed more securely. Elsewhere, Herzog and his zombie horde have arrived in a rural community. They break into a house and murder an elderly couple inside. His undead doctor then butchers the old man's arm and attaches it to Herzog's elbow through dark magic. After that, the Nazi zombies visit a nearby cemetery where German soldiers from World War II are laid to rest. Herzog uses his magic to try to bring them back to life, but nothing really happens. His doctor then reveals that most of these corpses have decayed for so long that barely anything from their body remains. This means that to create an army of undead soldiers, they will have to make fresh kills first. Upon hearing this, Herzog immediately goes after the priest of a nearby church. He first bludgeons the poor man with a communion chalice. Then, using his evil magic, Herzog touches the priest's face, bringing him back to life. It is now certain that the commander is capable of raising his own army of undead soldiers. Back at the hospital, Martin once again regains consciousness, but finds himself restrained to his bed. An off-duty police officer is seen dozing off off outside his room. Suddenly, a young boy named Bobby appears from under Martin's bed. This boy reveals that he is an American tourist who has been backpacking across Norway with his mother. Since she fell ill, some locals brought her to the hospital. That is when he first saw Martin, who had been blabbering about seeing zombies in the woods. Turns out, the kid is part of a secret group called the Zombie Combat Squad, back in America, and sneaked into this room to snap a photo of Martin's arm. He does so, and sends the photo back to his group in the US. Soon afterwards, Martin asks the boy to release him, promising to give chocolate in return. The little boy obliges and unbuckles him from the bed, only to find out that Martin doesn't have any chocolate. Dick. Meanwhile, our hero sees that his hospital room is heavily guarded by 2 police officers. This would make escape almost impossible, but just then, the devilish arm senses his frustration and springs into action. It grabs Bobby by the collar and throws him against the window. A shocked Martin hops out of the hospital through the broken window and sees Bobby lying unconscious on the ground. The kid is not breathing, which prompts Martin to give him CPR. Unfortunately, the devil arm is so powerful that it punctures right through the boy's chest. Seconds later, the police officer on duty wakes up and sees that the hospital room's window is broken. He immediately rushes in and peeks out of the window, only to see Martin kneeling near the dead boy. Bobby, no! Seconds later, Martin takes off and the cop gives chase. The devil arm senses his panic and grabs the badge of a Mercedes car that is parked nearby. It throws the badge so hard that it gets planted in the cop's skull, killing him on the spot. Martin then steals a car from the parking lot and escapes. Coincidentally, Bobby's phone is still with him, and soon it receives a call from the zombie combat team. Martin picks it up and explains that Bobby was killed by zombies. In response, the team leader Daniel says that he and his team will be traveling to Norway to kill those zombies. This makes Martin a bit relieved, as his nightmare is finally about to be over. But unbeknownst to him, this zombie combat team is not as professional as they sound. It is simply a ragtag group of 3 American nerds who are into zombie conspiracies. Nonetheless, Daniel and his 2 assistants Monica and Blake arrive at Norway the very next day. They make plans to visit Martin, but first, they stock up on weapons to fight against the zombies. In the meantime, Martin visits a World War II museum in a nearby village. He wants to know what exactly this Nazi zombie army wants. Unfortunately for him, his photos have been plastered all across the front pages of daily newspapers. He is now being actively searched for by the police in relation to the murder of 9 people. Martin, however, has nowhere to go now and decides to push forward with his quest. He enters the museum and meets a souvenir shop clerk, Glenn Kenneth. Martin asks to be directed towards the Nazi memorabilia section, but unfortunately, Glenn has already recognized him from the newspaper articles and appears visibly scared. Martin fully knows that he is short on time and has to get the information ASAP, so he uses his zombie arm to intimidate Glenn and forces the clerk to take him to the memorabilia section. Shortly afterwards, the duo arrives on the 2nd floor of the museum, which contains all kinds of information on the Nazi invasion of Norway. Martin finally gets to read about Herzog's history. Turns out, during the Second World War, the town of Talvik had sabotaged the advance of the Nazi army into Norway. An enraged Hitler then personally sent Herzog to wipe out every last resident of this small town in revenge. However, Herzog and his men never actually made it to Talvik and were killed before they could carry out their orders. This finally makes Martin realize that zombie Herzog and the Nazi army have come back from the dead to complete their mission. Suddenly, Martin and Glenn hear loud screams coming from outside the museum. They peep through the windows and are horrified to see that the zombies have arrived. The Nazis mercilessly attack a group of tourists who had just disembarked in this town. A horrendous mass slaughter ensues, and every single tourist is killed. Following the bloodbath, Herzog has his troops march towards the memorabilia section, where Martin and Glenn are currently hiding. They soon reach the room and begin arming themselves with old weapons that were kept on display. Martin and Glenn escape death by pretending to be mannequins placed in one corner. Nonetheless, Herzog's arsenal now includes a World War II-era Tiger tank. With each passing hour, his army grows, and he becomes nearly invincible. After the coast is clear, Glenn and Martin finally come out of the museum. The whole parking lot is full of tourists who were killed by the Nazis moments ago. Many of these corpses come back to life and begin attacking the 2 men. Thankfully, Martin controls his magical arm and easily wipes out the zombies. He then accidentally discovers that his arm can also raise and control the dead. He tries this out with the dead body of a tourist and successfully revives it. Right at this moment, Daniel and his team arrive and kill the zombie Martin had resurrected. The two men then introduce each other, and Martin demonstrates his newfound power by raising the dead tourist once again. Following this, the zombie boys, Martin and Glenn, have a meeting to discuss their next course of action. They are fully aware that they do not have the number or the ammo to fight the large enemy army. Daniel thus comes up with an alternative plan, which includes recruiting help from Herzog's sworn enemy. It is then revealed that the Nazi team headed to Talvik during World War II was ambushed and killed by a group of Soviet soldiers. The bodies of those soldiers are still buried in the mountains surrounding the town. If Martin can resurrect these Soviet soldiers, they will have a substantial force to fight back with against the Nazis. Thus, Martin, Daniel, and the sidekick tourist zombie race to find the burial ground of the Soviet soldiers. The next morning, Monica, Blake, and Glenn track down the Nazi zombie army. They are headed towards Talvik, but first we'll have to cross a small patch of swamp on the way. The two ladies then convince Glenn to act as bait to draw some of the zombies into the swamp. They plan to kill the following enemies using pipe bombs they made from their supplies. Soon afterwards, they put their plan into action, and everything seems to work perfectly in the beginning. Glenn draws a large chunk of Herzog's army into the swamp. The two ladies then blow these ugly creatures into smithereens. But their success is short-lived. As Herzog turns his tiger tank towards them, he shoots several rounds of explosives, which blows up the whole area where the trio is hiding. The Nazi commander then continues on his way, believing the pesky humans to be dead. Elsewhere, Daniel and Martin discover the graveyard of the Soviet forces. Our hero then raises the entire troop of Russian zombies using his magical arm, and they start obeying him. The following morning, Herzog and his army of the undead reach the sleepy town of Talvik. They are ready to take their much-awaited revenge when suddenly, Martin shows up on the spot. He yells at the Nazi commander and points out that they have already evacuated the townspeople. Herzog's mood goes from bad to worse when Martin calls his own army of zombie Soviet fighters. These are the same soldiers that had killed Herzog and his men towards the tail end of World War II. Now they have come face to face once more. Seconds later, all hell breaks loose. The zombies from both sides converge on the town's central ground. The battle goes well for Martin at first. His army of undead plow through several enemies. Monica, Glenn, and Blake, who have miraculously survived yesterday's bombing, also arrive at the scene. On top of this, the leader of the Soviet soldiers, Lieutenant Stavarin, goes head-to-head with Herzog. He is a big, burly creature and beats up the Nazi commander brutally, but just as he is about to end Herzog for good, a Nazi zombie plunges an axe into his back. This gives Herzog enough time to regain his composure and finish off Stavarin once and for all. After this key victory, the Nazis eventually overpower the Russian zombies. Monica then urges Martin to eliminate Herzog, as it is their only road to victory. Thus, he jumps on the battlefield to fight Herzog face to face, while Daniel attempts to take control of the tiger tank, but things go absolutely horribly for our heroes, as Herzog proves to be too much for Martin. Glenn is eventually killed by a sneaky knife attack, while Monica and Blake are also on the cusp of death as several zombies surround them. Shortly after, Herzog stands atop the tiger tank, looking down on the beaten and bruised Martin. Unbeknownst to anyone, Daniel has successfully infiltrated the tank. Just as the Nazi commander is about to end Martin's life, Daniel fires the tank gun directly at Herzog. This causes the zombie's head to fly away into the mountains, while his decapitated body drops to the ground. Now that Herzog is dead, his army also falls lifelessly to the ground, saving Monica and Blake in the nick of time. In the aftermath of this battle, Martin is exonerated from the murder charges. He drives to the church where his girlfriend Hannah is buried. Martin digs up her corpse and brings her back as a zombie using his magical hand. But the madness is still not over, as in the final scene, the Nazi zombie doctor recovers Herzog's severed head, which still seems to be conscious. Out. Thank you for watching.